What is statistical hypothesis testing? The meat and potatoes of college-level statistics is statistical hypothesis testing. This is because statistical hypothesis testing allows practitioners to make decisions using data. The research question. Before statistical hypotheses are formulated, there is usually a research question. For instance, research question: is a potentially profitable drug efficacious in preventing hospitalization from a certain illness? In a perfect scientific world, a random sample of study participants would be randomly assigned to receive either the drug or a placebo. Then the statistician would compare the hospitalization rates in both arms of the study. But the statistician has an extra burden. Statistical significance. If the participants in the drug arm of the study have fewer hospitalizations than those participants in the placebo arm, the statistician must also defend whether the difference is or is not statistically significant. Indeed, the concept of statistical significance is where statistical hypothesis testing shines like a diamond. 2. Mutually exclusive hypotheses. In high school, you may have been taught that a hypothesis is an educated guess, but that's actually a terrible definition. Why? Because in college-level statistical hypothesis testing, we actually have two rival hypotheses, and these hypotheses are mutually exclusive. This mutual exclusivity means that if one hypothesis is true, the other hypothesis must be false. Indeed, in our drug efficacy example, one hypothesis could say that the drug has no effect on hospitalization, and its rival hypothesis, competing for acceptance, could say that the drug is efficacious in reducing hospitalization. Obviously, if a pharmaceutical company pumps money into researching and developing a new drug, their educated guess would be that the drug does, in fact, reduce hospitalization. Hypotheses don't exist in isolation. But hypotheses don't exist in isolation alone by themselves. Hypotheses are compared to one another, just like right does not exist without left. Up does not exist without down. Hot does not exist without cold. And the null hypothesis does not exist without its counterpart, called the alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis. What is the null hypothesis? Null hypotheses are typically general statements that reflect a simple explanatory model, often called the chance explanation. In our drug efficacy example, the null hypothesis would be that the new drug has no effect on hospitalization, and that any observed difference in the hospitalization rates is simply due to chance, nothing more. Stated another way, the null hypothesis could say that there is no difference in the hospitalization rates from the two arms of the study, i.e., the drug arm versus the placebo arm. Which hypothesis is the null hypothesis? The specification of the null hypothesis versus the alternative hypothesis may not be simple at the outset. The basis behind why one hypothesis is called the null hypothesis and another is called the alternative hypothesis depends on the ability to mathematically assume that the null hypothesis is true, and then see if evidence exists to contradict it. And this relies on the ability to construct a sampling distribution that assumes that the null hypothesis is true. Indeed, this will be discussed in greater detail later. At this point in your learning journey, just assume that null hypotheses reflect a simple explanatory model that can be the chance explanation, reflecting, say, no difference between two groups. And as you proceed further in your learning journey, it will become clearer that the choice of the null hypothesis is formulated in your ability to mathematically define a null distribution from which probabilities can be calculated. And the specific probability that you will be interested in calculating will be the probability of observing the data that is at least as extreme as the data that you already observed, again, in the future. Assuming, however, that the null hypothesis is true. And if this probability ends up being low, well, you won't have much confidence in the null hypothesis. And that will make the alternative hypothesis look way better by comparison. And this is a little foreshadowing of a statistic to come called the p-value, where p stands for the calculated probability of observing data at least as extreme as the data you already observed. Again, in the future, assuming the null hypothesis is true. Extreme? Extreme? And what defines the concept of extreme? The alternative hypothesis. In our efficacy example, the most extreme data that we could possibly observe would be no hospitalizations at all in the drug arm of the study, with every single participant being hospitalized in the placebo arm. But such super extreme data would be rare indeed in the real world. But in this context, extreme just means fewer hospitalizations in the drug arm than from the placebo arm, because the alternative hypothesis is that the drug is efficacious. The alternative hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis in our drug efficacy example is that the drug is efficacious. Stated another way, we can simply say that the hospitalization rate in the drug arm of the study is lower than that from the placebo arm. But how much lower? Since we don't know how much lower, it would be difficult to provide a sampling distribution under this hypothesis unless we specify exactly how much better the drug is than the placebo. But we wouldn't be able to estimate this efficacy until after we've performed the study. Another example. Safety studies. Multiple choice question. A pharmaceutical company wishes to test whether a potentially profitable drug is safe. The company performs a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial. The company records the rates of serious adverse events, SAES, for such things as myocarditis and transverse myelitis for both arms of the study. Determine the most appropriate null hypothesis. A. The SAE rate is higher for the drug than for the placebo. B. The SAE rate is lower for the drug than for the placebo. C. The SAE rate for the drug is different than for the placebo. D. The SAE rate for the drug is no different than for the placebo. And the answer is D, because no difference means the difference is exactly 0, perfectly able to specify a null distribution because 0 is a single value. And also, null hypotheses are often the chance explanation, meaning that the groups are no different with respect to measurements of interest, such as the SAE rates in this question. Burden of evidence. Whenever possible, the alternative hypothesis is chosen to be consistent with the model or perspective that the researcher wishes the burden of evidence to support. For example, a pharmaceutical company would never want a drug to be classified as unsafe unless the burden of evidence was strong enough to question safety. So, pharmaceutical companies are happy that the null hypothesis in safety studies is that the drug is safe. In efficacy studies, by contrast, pharmaceutical companies must demonstrate that the burden of evidence shows efficacy. This is because, typically, null hypotheses take negative positions, such as, there is no association between this and that, or no causal relationship between this and that. Examples of null hypotheses. The new drug is no different than the placebo with respect to efficacy. The new drug is no different than the placebo with respect to safety. There is no association between gender and endorsement of a particular political ideology. There is no relationship between dose and response for a new drug of interest. Multiple choice question. Every time I ever had my car repaired at Freddy's Automotive, the bill was more than the estimate, said Janice. Really? Asked Paul. Yeah, Janice exclaimed. And I just had my car towed to Freddy's. The bill will surely be more than the estimate, said Janice sadly. Proposition 1. Janice is using inductive reasoning. Proposition 2. Janice's conclusion may be wrong. A. Proposition 1 is true and Proposition 2 is true. B. Proposition 1 is true and Proposition 2 is false. C. Proposition 1 is false and Proposition 2 is true. D. Proposition 1 is false and Proposition 2 is false. And the correct choice is A, because inductive reasoning is reasoning from the specific to the general, and in the language of statistics, this is reasoning from the sample to the population. By attempting to make an inference about Freddie's general policy based on a few points of data, Janice is indeed using inductive reasoning, just like a pharmaceutical company attempting to test a cancer drug on a sample of rats. Accordingly, Proposition 1 is true, and by using inductive reasoning, our conclusion could be wrong. And this is why some theories in science that seem right at a certain time end up being replaced by better theories. And because scientists use inductive reasoning, science is never settled and is a continuously evolving method of formulating better and better models. Talking the talk at the college level. Due to the inherent uncertainty of inductive reasoning, when using statistics as a tool for science, there are words the knowledgeable statistician will never say. Words that a practitioner should never use when applying inferential statistics at the college level. Never say prove. Example, the results prove. Never say proved. Example, the authors proved. Never say proof. Example, these results provide proof that. Instead, use terms like suggest. Example, the results suggest that. Provide evidence for or against. Example, these results provide evidence for. Statistical jargon and the distinction between proof and evidence. The distinction between A, proof and evidence, and B, truth and models, was so important to the founders of modern statistical inference that, within the hypothesis testing paradigm, they insisted on framing test results in specific and precise language. Indeed, the verbiage of the two decisions from hypothesis testing that could be made was either to 1. Reject the null hypothesis, REJH sub 0, or 2. Fail to reject the null hypothesis, FTRH sub 0. This language emphasizes two important ideas about science in general. 1. Science is not a search for truth. Science isn't a search for truth. If you want truth, find a guru on a mountain or a religious leader eager to share theirs. Science in practice is a search for models, tools that explain and predict observations. Statisticians call those observations data. If you want a definition of science aligned with modern statistical inference, start here. Science is the pursuit of models that explain and predict data, not truth. Models. There is no sacred truth in science, only an ongoing effort to build models that fit the data better than the ones before. Lose sight of that, and you open the door to politicians and pundits who weaponize science to sell certainty where none exists. Don't be misled. Know what science is and what it isn't. 2. Science can be wrong. As we saw in Chapter 1 of my stats book, scientists draw conclusions about populations from samples, like testing a cancer drug on 100 rats to infer its effect on all rats. That's inductive reasoning, moving from specific to general. And inductive reasoning can be wrong. That's why science is uncertain. That's why it's never settled. But evidence can mount. As the pile grows, a theory becomes more venerable, more trusted as a model that explains and predicts reality. Still, that trust must be earned. It requires ongoing studies, replication, and testing across diverse populations to sharpen generalizability. Humans don't know the truth, but we can assume. The genius of the hypothesis testing paradigm lies in its structure. Two possible decisions: reject the null hypothesis or fail to reject the null hypothesis. And two possible states of nature: the null hypothesis is true or the alternative hypothesis is true. Partitioning scientific reality this way gives us exactly 4 possible outcomes. No more, no less. 2 of those outcomes are correct decisions. The statistician who rejects the null hypothesis when the alternative is true makes a correct decision. This would be like letting an efficacious drug pass from clinical trials into the market. And the statistician who fails to reject the null hypothesis when the null is true also makes a correct decision. This would be like keeping a useless drug from going to market. The statistician, a mere human, doesn't know which hypothesis is true, but under a set of mild assumptions, the probabilities of these correct decisions are, to quote R.A. Fisher, capable of rigorous expression. That means their probabilities can be calculated. 2 of those outcomes are errors. The statistician who rejects the null hypothesis when the null is true commits what is called a type 1 error. This would be like letting a useless drug go to market for people to use, in spite of no efficacy. Such people, recipients of the bitter fruits of a type 1 error, would be exposed to potential risks with no benefits. Bad deal, right? Fortunately for humanity, however, we can design the statistical hypothesis test to make this probability arbitrarily small. Good deal for us, right? The statistician who fails to reject the null hypothesis when the alternative hypothesis is true commits what is called a type 2 error. This would be like keeping an efficacious drug from going to the market. And here you could think of the people who could be helped by a good drug but won't get to take it, and stock prices that won't benefit from the potential profit. But again, the statistical hypothesis test can be designed so that this probability can also be made arbitrarily small. Another good deal, right? Since these probabilities are so important in decision-making, statisticians denote the probability of committing a type 1 error by the Greek letter alpha, and the probability of committing a type 2 error by the Greek letter beta, in homage to the ancient Greeks, who taught us so much. This framework doesn't just acknowledge uncertainty, it formalizes it. It gives scientists a disciplined way to reason under uncertainty, make defensible decisions, and communicate how likely they are to be wrong. That's the brilliance of the hypothesis testing paradigm. We humans don't know which hypothesis is actually true, but we can assume and calculate the probability that our decision is right or wrong. Good deal for us. For us. Good deal for us. Good deal for us.